We're going to be doing 13 and 14, and we'll start at 13. There are 22 verses, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why don't we, for now, start with, let's just start with these. So that's 5. What's 5 divided into 22? 4.5, right? Okay. So how about each one of you read 4 verses? And go ahead and start it, Angeline, if you can. Yeah, please.
The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever is the first open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and beast, is mine." Then Moses said to the people, "Remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery. For by a strong hand the Lord brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Today in the month of Abib you are going out. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hittites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service this month."
I think you're starting at 6. Go ahead and start at 6, and you could just do 4 verses.
Now shall be unleavened bread, and the seventh day shall be a feast of the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with thee. Neither shall there be leaven seen with thee in thy quarters. And thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, "This is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign unto thee, and upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes, that the Lord's law may be in thy heart. For with a strong hand hath the Lord brought thee out of Egypt. For thou shalt therefore keep his ordinance in his season from year to year."
When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborns of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of a man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in time to come, your son asks you, "What does this mean?" you shall say to him, "By a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, from the house of slavery."
For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrificed to the Lord all the males that first opened the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be as a mark on your hand or frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, "Lest the people change their minds when they see the war and return to Egypt." But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness, toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up and out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle.
Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, "God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here." And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night would not depart from the people.
Okay, so good job. So, I always like to have the class participating. I feel like that's when the most learning takes place. So, wanted to ask you, what does consecration mean to you? It's the first part here. Hold on here just a moment. 13, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, consecrate to me all the firstborn. So does anybody have a definition of what consecrate, that's a hard word for me to say, means?
Like,
Go ahead. Or-
yeah.
Oh, set apart? Okay, good.
Is it like made holy or something like that? Or is it just dedication to God?
Well, you're not allowed to ask questions because I'm a teacher, and I may not know the answer. No, I'm joking. So I could see it both ways, personally. So anybody else? What does it mean to consecrate? Go ahead.
How about dedicate?
Dedicate? Okay.
It's kind of got that word sacred in there, so it's setting something apart for the Lord.
Right, okay. And in this we see possibly 3 ways of consecration. That's a hard word for me. So one is we can consecrate ourselves. 2 is we could consecrate a baby. The example is it would be our own, I believe. And the 3rd is we can consecrate an animal. What would be the differences in those? So we're talking consecrate, and what's the definition? So for me, when I look at this, first of all, I do believe it's a setting aside, it's a dedication. It's something we can do for ourselves. Who was one of the babies in the Bible that got consecrated to God? I'm going to give you a clue. He had long hair. Okay, Samson. And Samson ended up following God, correct? Yeah. At times. He had his ups and downs. So I did research on this, and believe it or not, I struggled to find a lot. There are examples. So Samson, there are people who, in a way, were consecrated. So one would be, but it doesn't use that word necessarily. So Abraham, Moses, God, called Moses from being a shepherd. Samuel, we know about. Mary, mother of Jesus, she was kind of in a way consecrated. Would you guys agree with that? Disagree with that? So the question then is, should we consecrate ourselves? You guys aren't very lively today. The snow must have taken all your energy. So let me read a song that we sing sometimes, and it goes like this. I'd sing it, but I don't have a good voice. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow with endless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. And I won't read the whole thing, but have you guys sang that song before? Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, for Thee. So sometimes when we look at a word, we may say, I don't really know what it means. These people, this is not an inspired song necessarily. Maybe the person that wrote it says it was, but it's not like the scripture we look at. But based on the other verses in that, what does consecrate mean there?
Well, there it's saying that in that song, the writer wants God to take over all of their faculties,
Right.
their abilities to walk, to move, to think.
Right. That's good. Anybody else? Go ahead. Dedication?
Yourself to
Okay, good.
the Lord, or dedicate this item or this creature or whatever is dedicated to the Lord, so it is.
Have you ever been listening to the radio and you hear somebody call in and say, it's my anniversary and I want you to play this song and dedicate it to my wife. Okay, so it's something that's made special at that moment. Here's where I see the difference in the three. And again, I had a hard time finding a lot of information on this. If we were to consecrate an animal, what we're doing is we're making it special. We're acknowledging that it came from God, and it's a reminder to us of who God is, okay? If it's for a baby, there was once a person I know where during the birth of one of their children, they were having complications, and he said, God, if you allow me to have a healthy baby, I will consecrate this baby to you, okay? Whether or not that's a good idea, I don't know, because I believe that there's an element of free will and children make their choice. If I could make all of my family be Christians committed for the rest of our lives by consecrating them, I would. But I can't. But when it's for us, I believe it's an agreement, something that we're saying we're going to do now. An old Bible preacher once told me we should never make a vow with God that we can't keep. So I don't believe if we say, God, if you do this, I will never sin again in my life. I don't believe that would be appropriate. But I do believe that this level of consecration for ourselves is an element of self-sacrifice, of surrender, of saying, God, I'm going to do my best to serve you forever. And I wanted to read to you, I'm going to be reading some songs to you today. One of my favorite songs is He Leadeth Me, and the other one is All to Jesus I Surrender. This says, all to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender all, that's the chorus. All to Jesus I surrender, make me Savior wholly thine. Let me feel thy Holy Spirit, truly know that thou art mine. Lord, I give myself to thee, fill me with thy love and power, let thy blessing fall on me. So again, there's this idea of self-sacrificing. It's a way of saying, God, I am yours. Now, I once said a prayer saying, God, please take my free will away from me. I don't want to fight the fights that I have anymore. I have too many problems in my life. Please, I give myself to you. Take away my free will. Is that appropriate? By the way, it didn't work.
I mean, that's kind of at the heart of how Jesus taught us to pray, right?
Yeah.
It's about wanting God's will done on earth as it is in heaven. So it's kind of an invitation for us saying, I want you to do your will in my life.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I was just remembering even Jesus said that, used that language in John 17, he's in the garden before he's betrayed. He talks about his disciples. He says, as you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. For their sake, I consecrate myself, that they may also be sanctified in truth. So,
Right.
So Jesus did for us.
So in a way, becoming a Christian is a way of
Yeah.
consecrating. When we acknowledge Jesus, and we say, okay, I'm going to follow you the rest of my life. In a way, we kind of are consecrating ourselves. There's another verse that I want to point out to you. It's Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. So I like that quote there where he's saying, it is no longer I that live, but he that lives in me. And that's kind of what we're looking for, and I believe it's a part of this consecration, is that we are giving ourselves to God. I think that's a part of salvation. Go ahead, Paul. I could tell you want it.
There in 1 Corinthians 6, he says, verse 19, what? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God.
Yeah. Now, when I said that, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and so what's one of the things that happens when we become a Christian? That's in Acts 2, to give you a hint. We receive the gift of
Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit, right? Does God give us gifts that have no meaning or value? No. So there is value in this, and I think when we look at that, that's one of the things that helps us commit ourselves to God. I don't think can do it on our own. We need God's help, and so one of the other things you'll see is, God, please fill me with your Spirit. Please guide me. You know, one song, oh, guide me, lead me, oh, guide me and show me your way. So we're looking for God to lead us. We're also looking for ourselves to surrender, and we're also saying that we're giving ourselves to God. Does that kind of make sense from a consecration point of view? Okay, I'm watching the clock here, so I said I got 20 minutes for this chapter. Okay, so let's go ahead and any questions on that? Anybody want to make another comment on that?
Is Korban the same as like consecration?
I don't know what that means.
Oh.
So in it, yeah, when Elise and I named Corbin,
Oh.
our firstborn, it means a gift devoted to God, and that was referring to
Okay.
money that was set aside as an offering. This gift is dedicated to God, so
Okay.
don't use it for something else.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, good. So let's go ahead and go to chapter 14. And why don't we start in the same, except we'll start here. And there's 30 verses in that one. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's do 5 each. No, let's do 4 each, but then the person that reads the last will just finish the chapter. So starting in 14.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, They are wandering in the land, the wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord." And they did so.
When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed toward the people, and they said, "What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel, while the people of Israel were going out defiantly.
But the Egyptians pursued them after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamped by the sea, beside before Baal-Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, "Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to any wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had better been for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness."
Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen.
And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left.
The Egyptians pursued them and went after them into the midst of the sea. All Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down at the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariots' wheels so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and upon their horsemen."
So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. And as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, all of the host of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, so the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses.
Okay. So when we go through this, is there a question that's coming into is there something when you read this chapter that's I like to ask these questions. A question that is lingering in your mind. So basically the 10 plagues have just been happened. Originally at the beginning, Moses said, "Hey, I'm going to free you from this Egyptian persecution, if you will." They saw incredible plagues, incredible miracles. They're free. Everything's going right. And what happens when they get to the sea?
Did you bring us out here to kill us?
Yeah. Are there no graves? Yeah. So what is your take on Israel at this point? Do you see them as strong, committed people, or do they seem a little weak?
They seem weak, but it makes sense. They've been in Egypt for 400 years and clearly haven't been fully dedicated, fully consecrated to God, haven't been worshiping Him.
Okay, good.
Even though they've seen so many miracles, I can understand how they would be confused.
Confused? Okay, good. So I saw a tape once, and they don't really know where they crossed, but they have their probable areas, and one of the probable areas is kind of like a cove surrounded by cliffs with one road in and really no way out. And so you got the sea, they can't go right, they can't go left, and the main pathway, the Egyptians are coming, and they're kind of caught there. So I want to read you a couple definitions here, and then we'll talk about this more. There's a thing, and Kevin has another word for it also that is closely related, if not the same. The first one is called dramatic irony. And dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the character. Okay, what's the other word you use for that?
Yeah, audience omniscience.
I
Like
know.
we know everything here, but the people in the story don't.
Your phrase sounds smarter. Okay, so what does Israel know at this point? This is about 1,500 years prior to Jesus, about 3,500 years ago from where we are. What do we know that they don't know at this point?
Yeah, everything after that.
Okay, that's a good answer. Be more specific, though. What else do we know?
We know that God will constantly test them in the wilderness. We know that they will continuously fail in those tests and their duty to God, and will fall to apostasy as a nation of Israel. And that God will eventually, but God never abandons them, and that they will eventually, the whole plan will eventually end in Jesus, who will redeem the world.
Right, okay. So they know the end, right? Yeah, so that's a really good point. We know the end, they don't. They don't know what the end is going to look like. This style of writing, believe it or not, is actually used on purpose in modern day writing. And so the idea is it's a thriller movie. The bad guy's in the closet. The lady's running out to the car and runs back and forth. And you're like, don't run near the closet. There's a bad guy. The lady finally gets in the car, starts it up. And you're like, whew, the bad guy didn't get her. And she goes, I forgot my coat and it's in the closet. And you're like, don't go to the closet. There's a bad guy there. And it's designed to build suspense. But I thought it would be appropriate to look at this as we know the end. Now, these people had their ups and downs in their faith here. Does that happen to us as Christians? Are there times when our faith is weakened or our love is weakened? And so we should all be I'm raising my hand. We should all be raising our hands. I want to read you one of the songs, another song here. This is When My Love for Christ Grows Weak. It goes, when my love for Christ grows weak, when for deeper faith I seek, then in thought I go to thee, Garden of Gethsemane. When my love for man grows weak, when for stronger faith I seek, hill of Calvary I go, to the scenes of fear and woe. Then to life I turn again, learning all the worth of pain, learning the might that lies in full self-sacrifice. So we have these ups and downs in our lives. I was going to say, does anybody want to share some that they've had? But that might be TMI, right? Too much information. But go ahead, Gil.
I was just thinking about, like, in my family's life, how, I don't know, the loss of close people made us feel weak, and in worse moments, maybe like, is God there? You know, why is he letting this happen? You know, when my mom died when I was in high school, and Dad 15 years ago, my sister with us in our home, but looking back, it's those weak moments where I really grew a lot in my faith because I trusted him. But in those moments, I didn't feel like that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, we had one once where we were in a group and some people had a young child and his health was deteriorating and everybody was praying and ultimately the child passed away. It actually caused the people at the time, maybe they got back together, caused a separation, a divorce in the family, and a loss of faith. So what can we, first of all, I would like, especially the young people here, is to know that that's going to be normal. People always ask, they'll ask me a question in business, is real estate going to go down? I go, at some point it will. It's called the economic cycle. Well, this is called the emotional cycle. And there's going to be times where you're feeling really strong. There's times when you're going to be feeling really weak. And pretty much all us adults, right? Let's all raise our hands if that happens to us. Okay, so I want you to see that it happens and it's a normal thing. But then I want to talk about what can we do when those times happen. What can we do when we're struggling to make ourselves feel stronger? Now, I once said a prayer. I remember where it was in my truck, the location. And I said, God, please, no matter whatever happens in my life, please don't let me lose my faith in you. Again, I've had this challenge with God, just take away my free will, make me pure. What can we do when those times are happening to keep us, to get out of that rut that we're in? What can we do? Or what have some of you done that have helped you?
I have prayed and then read Psalms. Especially when I feel weak, I feel dry. And Psalms just has such beautiful wording of such adoration of God. It's always helpful.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
I look to examples in the Bible that people having really rough times and then coming through it as God fixing them. I mean, every time I feel really, really down, I said, look, you're not Job, man. So it's not that bad. And I just take faith in the fact of seeing how God works wonders through tragedy. I mean, Jesus died on the cross, and it was like the worst thing, that's God. It's like the worst thing that happened in the history of the universe.
Right.
And he turned it into the best thing that happened in the history of the universe.
Right.
So it's kind of like, yeah, it's tough, it's financially, hard right now. They don't have enough money for the things I want, but come on. It's not really that big of a deal in the end.
Right.
But that's just me.
So we look at this dramatic irony that we talked about. Another one is called situational irony. And that's where the end is completely different than what we thought it was going to be. Did the Jews have the right interpretation of who Jesus was going to be by and large? No, they were wrong. So that would be situational irony, where what they think is completely not what's going to happen. Okay? Again, dramatic irony is where us, the audience, knows more than what's going to happen. Okay? So, go.
They still don't have it right.
They still don't have it right. Yeah, they don't. And it's interesting, too, because you wonder why. Supposedly, this is a side note, I didn't prepare for this, but supposedly when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, those were dated somewhere around 100 BC to, let's just say, 100 AD, but some of them are believed to be pre-birth of Jesus. And by the way, they had pretty much the entire Old Testament, I think with the exception of the book of, is it Esther? Yeah. Esther, yeah. But there are some evidences that some of the Jews were thinking the Messiah was going to be Jesus, but the majority of them were not. So one of the things that I think is interesting that I do sometimes is look forward, okay? Someday we hope we're all going to be in heaven, okay? Now, I remember in school I was stressed out over a test, okay? Now, can you imagine being in heaven and everything's great, and you look back and go, I was so stupid to let this test stress me out. Heaven is so great compared to this grade I could have got. I've had situations in my job where I thought I should have got promoted and I didn't, and I was very, very, very upset. I actually quit one of them. But can you imagine being in heaven and you're like, I got this itty bit of time here, and then I got this all eternity. Boy, why did I let all these things bother me in the big picture? So one is to go back and try to put things in perspective and say, is this really as important as I think it is in the big picture? If we all make it to heaven, really not that much here on this life matters. So we talked a little bit about these things that make us weak, and we're talking about emotional situations. What about when it's our actual faith? What if we're challenged from a faith point of view? Have any of you ever had one of the, and this is what I think is happening to Israel here. Have any of you ever had one of that moments like, what if there really isn't a God? Oh no. Have any of you ever, does that happen to any of you? Okay, so it does some of us. So what are some tools we can do to deal with that when that happens?
Look around.
Look around, right. Yeah. Look at creation.
I think about like people that don't believe and then they question you and then I kind of go, okay, well, what if there's not? Then I just go, no, you just
Yeah.
no, that's not what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, on a side note, somebody once said to me, they were giving me a hard time for believing, and I said, why does it bother you that I believe? If you're an atheist, it really doesn't matter to you what I do. You should be cared more about yourself. So one of the things for me is I go back to the basics, and in my mind, I've looked at things, I've studied the Bible, I've looked at what I call different evidences, and every time I go back and I study these things, I come back, yes, I believe in God, I believe it's the God of the New Testament, I believe it's why we are all here, and to a certain degree, those arguments, I take them and I put them in a box, and I put them on the shelf, and then when I get to a time of weakness, and I'm like, oh, I'm questioning things, I go back and say, you know what, I talked about this, I've thought about it. I'm not going to rehash the same information. I do believe. Okay, just a tool for you there. One more song here, and then I'm watching the time here a little bit. This one, when my love to Christ grows weak, when for deeper faith I seek, then in thought I go to the Garden of Gethsemane. When my love for man grows weak, when for stronger faith I seek, hill of Calvary I go, to the scenes of fear and woe. There behold his agony, suffered on the bitter tree. See his anguish, see his faith, love triumphant, still in death. Then to life I turn again, learning all the worth of pain, learning all the might that lies in full self-sacrifice. The reason I was reading some of these songs again, and is again, they're written by people who read the Bible, but they're not necessarily inspired. Most of these songs that we looked at were written around 150 years ago. And so the point I'm trying to make to you is that if you do have these challenges, they were having them 150 years ago. Israel was having them 3,500 years ago. We have a tendency to look at them and say, wow, they seem so weak. Wow, I would not have done that. How many of you would have eaten the fruit in the garden? Wouldn't be me, right? Guess what? It probably would be you.
I can say it wouldn't be me because I don't like fruit.
Okay. Yeah. For you, it was a cow. So, yeah. So when we read these things, if we have this tendency to say, wow, I am not like them, keep in mind you probably would be. Keep in mind you have the benefit of knowing the whole story, and you knowing the end. And then keep in mind, ultimately, when you are in heaven someday, it is highly likely you'll look back on your life and say, had I only known, I would have not carried that stress. I would have slept better at night. I would have had more peace because this is so incredibly wonderful. Can't believe I let something like that bother me. So anyways, that's the one point. If I want you to, I always say there should be one strong point is keep the faith, be strong, look at what eternity is like, and know that God is strong. This is kind of the theme here, is God delivers on his promises. Took 400 years, but he delivered. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I love about this chapter is where he says in verse 13, fear not, stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. The Egyptians whom you see today, you'll never see. The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. A lot of times if I'm not doing well, it's because I'm trying to take control of everything, and it's just, right. I read something like that, like, okay, be quiet.
You're not allowed to say that. He's your dad.
My daughter says to me, shut up.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Then,
be quiet.
Yeah. Be still, and trust God. And, and then it's kind of like in the first chapter, we can think of consecration as kind of a one-time thing, and there is something to that, but also like a daily thing too. And it's when Jesus in the Gospel of Luke talks about inviting people to follow him, he says, deny yourself and take up your cross daily.
Daily.
And I like that insertion of that word daily, because one more time, I'm going to consecrate this day to you again, each day.
Exactly, yeah. And we're going to see those ups and downs as we move through this chapter. So,
Yeah, I think we often think of the plagues as, defeating the Egyptian gods and something for Pharaoh to convince him to let the people go. But this guy Moses comes in, and I doubt the whole nation of Israel knew who he was. There's probably some people that knew who he was, and he's saying, "Yeah, I'm from God.
yeah.
We're going to leave here. I'm going to take you out." Well, I bet a lot of those plagues and stuff were also convincing the Israelites that, yeah, this really is God. And so, as we look at it, God knows we need that kind of stuff as well. So here we have the whole story. And in our times of doubt, we have these things to go back and look at. But, like you said, God does follow through with his promises. And we may be in a lull like Israel was at times. And we may be on a mountaintop like Israel was at times. And so God gives us that. And we can't forget that those things are, God helping us through those times.
Yeah, and I think we are out of time and I want to do the questions, but I think too, God is the most masterful person on trying to create a convincing message. And if you were to watch a boxing match and two guys are going at it and they walk into each other and the guy throws a left hook and knocks the guy out, you're probably going to say it was a lucky punch. That's what the other guy's going to say, or I wasn't ready. But what if the other guy goes out there and plays with him, jabs him a few times, and then you could tell he's just playing with him, and then at the end he knocks him out. There's no doubt who won the fight, right? And when we look at this, God wins 10 times and then deals the final blow, and they're all free. And it's a more convincing message that way than if he had just went in and said, Egyptians are gone. Okay. So anyways, so we're out of time. Let's get to these questions here. It's customary to go 5 minutes late. So who did the Lord say was to be consecrated? It's D, the firstborn male. In what month did the Israelites depart Egypt? The answer is C, A-B-I-B. I'm not going to say it. During the 7-day feast to commemorate the Egyptians leaving Egypt, what did the Lord say was not to be seen anywhere in Israel borders? A, leaven. 4, how frequently were the Israelites to commemorate the day they left Egypt at the appointed time, year after year? 5, whose land was the Lord promised to give to the Israelites? The Canaanites. 6, which of the following did the Lord command Israel to give over to him? And D, the firstborn offspring of every womb. 7, what were the Israelites commanded to redeem with a lamb? A, firstborn, every firstborn donkey. Where am I in time? I'm going to speed up a little bit. Okay. 8, what was to be done to the donkeys that were not redeemed? Their necks were to be broken. That's C. What country did the Israelites not travel through, even though that route was shorter? A, the Philistine country. 10, why did God lead the people around by the desert toward the Red Sea? B, so they would not return to Egypt if they faced war. What bones did Moses take with him? D, Joseph's. 12, what did the Lord guide the Israelites during the day? C, a pillar of cloud. 13, what did the Lord give Israelites during the night? A pillar of fire. Okay, the section 2 review. So I'm just going to, 1 is 11, 2 is 13, 3 is 12, 4 is 10, 5 is 13, 6 is 8, 7 is 9, 8 is 10, 9 is 12, 10 is 8, 11 is 9, 12 is 12, and 13 is 9. Okay, so I'm going to just read a few of these. Where are we? Got 3 minutes. So I want to ask this question because this threw me off. I study usually more than I should. Which way was the wind blowing when they crossed the Red Sea? East. Would that be a headwind, tailwind, right crosswind, or left crosswind? So, answer, we don't know. It's a trick question. I researched it and I don't know, because it looks like they were actually traveling from Egypt, kind of like a southeast, okay? When we say which way does the wind blow from, it's the direction the wind's coming from. So if we say we got a north wind, it's coming out of the north towards us, not towards the north, just so you know, because I was testing these questions on the family. So anyways, that's another story. I have a really neat DVD on what possible places where they crossed the sea. I was going to find it and offer to share it with anyone, but I can't find it. So let's finish 14 here. I'm just going to go through these. 1 is B, 2 is C, 3 is B, 4 is D, 5 is C, 6 is B, 7 is A, 8 is D, 9 is A, 10 is B, 11 is C, 12 is A, 13 is D, 14 is A, 15 is C, 16 is B, 17 is D, 18 is B, and 19 is A. Okay, we are past time. Kevin, do you have